The Federal Reserve came out with its latest announcement. There wasn't much of a change. We did see that there's the possibility that they will increase or reduce quantitative easing as it pertains to keeping their pulse on the economy. But here to talk to us about it today is Benjamin Friedman. He's an economist at Harvard University. Ben, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
So what do you make of this latest statement?
I think the main background is that the economic performance in the last, say, 6 weeks has been very disappointing. If the economy were moving ahead vigorously, if jobs were increasing, the unemployment rate were falling, and production were increasing, then the conversation at the FOMC meeting would have been about how soon do we start backing off from quantitative easing, and maybe even thinking about how quickly the federal funds rate would be moving up. But that's not been what's going on out in the world about us. Production has been weak, employment has been weak, and so I don't think they have much choice but to stay in place for the moment, and that's what they did.
Sure. A lot of people have been trying to predict when they think the Federal Reserve may begin to scale back on easing. In light of the most recent economic news and in light of this latest announcement, do you think they have any idea when they're going to even start doing this?
I don't think so, Joe. And I think the main point is that whenever you thought that might be, if you were doing the thinking 6 weeks ago, you have to think it's going to be later now because of all of the disappointing news. If you and I had been having this conversation 6 weeks ago, we might have talked about how by May or June we might be getting close, and perhaps at mid-year they'd be cutting back. But unless something surprising happens in the economy now, I don't think we're that close.
Sure. Now, some other economists and analysts have suggested that if the numbers, the economic numbers, continue to weaken, that the Fed may actually step in and add more quantitative easing. Do you think that's a possibility?
It's always a possibility, but I think they're doing a lot. They're now adding to the portfolio at the rate of $1 trillion per year. That strikes me as a large number. And of course, you could say, well, what about 2 trillion? Why not 3? Why not 5, 8, 10? Those are all good hypothetical questions, but the basic point is $1 trillion a year is a lot to add to the central bank's portfolio, even in an economy of this size. And so I think things would have to get much worse than they look now in order to have an increase in the pace of bond purchases.
So bottom line, Ben, do you think this is just more of the same coming out of the Fed?
Well, I think it's more of the same, but in response to data developments that weren't more of the same. To repeat, 6 weeks ago, we had a right to think that the economy would have been moving along more rapidly than has been the case. And those of us who thought that, and I think that includes lots of folks at the Federal Reserve, have been disappointed. Well, now that disappointment may be unfortunate, but it's a fact. We have to live with that. And so until the data turn around, to be specific, until we get some increase in production and jobs and decline in unemployment, I don't think they have much choice but to stay in place. And the unfortunate thing is that even though the first quarter gross domestic product report was pretty disappointing, only 2.5%, most people I know think it's going to be even slower in the second quarter. And so I think we're going to be well into the summer before the evidence is in place to warrant them doing anything different.
Certainly, Ben. And people
I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, and certainly people will continue to parse through this latest statement. We'll wait for a couple weeks until we get more of the minutes out from the Fed. But thank you so much, Benjamin Friedman, economist at Harvard University, for being with us today.
Thanks, Joe. Pleasure to talk with you.
I'm Deaux, The Street.